There was this one box. You know which one, right? For you, it was a different painting than it was for me. But you know exactly the one I mean. The cover on the horror shelf you were just a little bit afraid of. The one you were not supposed to be looking at, but you looked anyways, every single week. Maybe it was that monster coming out of a toilet, a melting face, or a hand coming up through a bed. Something airbrushed and just impossible and a little too much glowing under the lights, promising you the worst night of your life for $1 and your membership card. And here's the strange part of that. You can still see that painting, like right now, every color of it. But the movie, if you even got to rent it, you could not tell me 3 things that happened in it, because you remember the box, not the movie, just the box. So why is that? Hey, I'm Dan, and this is Retro Vault After Dark. And if you're new here, this is a show where we're going to talk about what it actually felt like to watch movies in the last century. Not the movies themselves specifically. I mean, I'm not ranking anything. I want the watching part, where you were, who you were with, like what it smelled like, and really what scared you. Last time we sat in a car in a gravel field, and we figured out why the drive-in made bad movies feel dangerous. Tonight, we're going to go inside, out of the weather, under the fluorescent lights, into the one building in town that was basically a museum that you were allowed to touch stuff. Tonight, we're going to the video store. And one thing about it that has never made sense to me is, why do we all remember the box so much better than the movies inside? Back to the video stores of our childhoods. I mean, I'm not talking the Blockbusters or the Hollywood Video. I'm talking the mom and pop shops, because those are the places that did half the work. Maybe it's a Friday night. Really doesn't matter the time of year. It's somewhere in the 80s or early 90s. And you've been thinking about this trip since like school got out. The whole family piles in the car for it. Nobody piles into a car to rent movies today. Yet, you all piled into the car to go to that store. Then you push open the door, and there it is. That flat, even, buzzing fluorescent wash that made everything look like evidence. They had that dense commercial carpet, the kind they only ever put in banks and funeral homes. Oh, and the smell. Popcorn, because somebody microwaved it behind the counter. It's warm and plastic, if it was the right kind of place, with cigarette smoke soaked so deep into the carpet, it's become part of the building. Oh, and the walls. This is the part people totally forget. The boxes, they're not lined up like at the library. You know, spines out, all the same. They were all turned to face you. Every cover, a painting, staring out into the room just all at once, trying to catch your eye from across the store. It wasn't a shelf. It was a wall of faces. And you walked into it, slowly, maybe for like an hour sometimes, because that was the entertainment. Not the movie, it was the choosing. You would pick up that heavy plastic case, read the back, put it down, pick up the next one. I heard this story about a guy from Oregon talking about his old store like years later, who says he can still draw you a map of exactly where every section was. He does not remember the movies, he remembers the map. And in the good stores, like the small ones, there was this person behind the counter who had just seen all of them. That clerk, he could look at you and just quietly steer you towards the thing that was going to change your life, or away from the thing your mother would kill him for renting to you, because there was a shelf you were not allowed to go near. There always was, the horror wall. In a lot of these places, there was the doorway with a curtain or like a saloon door or maybe some beads. In this room, you understood without being told you were never ever going to go into it. The whole store was a map of what you were and what you were not allowed to want yet. Just hold that memory for a minute. The trip, the light, the wall of paintings, that map in your head. We have not watched anything yet, and it's already one of the strongest memories of your childhood. How did the packaging do that? Here's the first answer to that question, and it's a pretty good one. That box, it wasn't trying to describe a movie to you. It was just trying to win a fight. Now, picture the wall again. 100 paintings, they're all facing out, and they're all screaming at once. Your cover has about 3 seconds to reach across that room, grab you by the collar, pull you over before your eyes slide to the next one. Like 3 seconds. And that's the whole job. And everything about the painting, the color, the monster, the impossible explosion, and the promise, it's engineered for those 3 seconds. And the reason it mattered so much comes down to something incredibly boring and incredibly important too, the law. When home video started, the studios, they were just terrified of it. They tried to control renting, and they lost in the Supreme Court in 1984. The court basically said, once you've bought a copy of a tape, it's yours. You can rent it out in the studio. They can't charge you every time, which sounds like a win for the little guy. And it was. But watch what they did to them. The studios, they couldn't make more money on renting, so they made their money on the selling, up front to the store. And they set the price of a new tape at like $70, $80, even $90 just for one single tape. So now think about who is actually buying that box. It's not you. You're renting it for $1. The person the cover has to convince, it's the store owner, standing at a trade show, deciding whether to spend $90 of his own money on this tape and trying to bet if it'll rent 50 times before it wears out. The painting, it's not an ad for a movie. It's a sales pitch to a small businessman. It has to promise him a hit. And that is where the whole strange, beautiful economy of this thing gets built. Because a flood of new companies, they show up and feed that hunger. Vestron, Empire, Full Moon, little outfits that could never afford a real ad campaign and could never buy a billboard or even a TV spot. The only weapon they had, it was that box. So they just poured everything into it. And they hired real painters, illustrators, working in airbrush and acrylics, cranking out these hyper-saturated, gorgeous, lurid paintings, and fast. A lot of them, those painters, they hadn't even seen the movie. Because they couldn't. It barely even existed yet. It was just a concept. They were handed a title, maybe a photograph, possibly even a paragraph. One of the great cover artists, an Italian painter, basically, he never watched the films. He worked from a still and his own imagination. These guys, they tell stories about this, about being handed a job with nothing but a title and the instruction and being told, just do what you want. Yeah, do what you want. Invent something that will stop a kid dead in an aisle. That was the assignment. So the video store turned into something just nobody planned. It became an art gallery, a free one, open, super late, for working class kids who were never going to set foot in a real museum, walking slowly past hundreds of original paintings made by professionals at the top of their little craft, each one competing to be the most exciting thing in the room, which I feel is a lovely story. Yet, it still doesn't fully answer the question, right? Because, okay, all right, the box, it was a great painting. It was built to grab you, fine, right? But a movie poster grabs you too. And you do not spend the rest of your life haunted by movie posters. So why did you let that box get in? Why did it beat the actual movie? The thing with the sound and the motion and 90 minutes of work just for you, in your own memory. The painting, it can't be that good. Something else must be going on, right? And to get to that, you have to know one more thing about those boxes. Here's the craziest thing about that box that should change everything in your mind. In an awful lot of cases, the box, it came first. Not first as in the marketing went out before the premiere. First as in the painting existed before the movie did, before the script did, before anyone was even cast, before a single frame was shot. There was this producer named Charles Band. He ran some of these little companies, and his method, which was not a secret because he talked about it, it was this. The poster, it comes first. He would commission the painting, the title, the whole gorgeous promise, and then take it to a film market and sell it. He'd sell the painting, get orders from video stores and foreign buyers based on a picture of a movie that didn't even exist. And then, with that money, go make something to put in the box. The painting, it did not advertise the film. The painting paid for the damn film. The film existed to justify the painting. So sit with what that means for the thing on the cover. The monster on the box, it was probably never even in the movie. It was invented by a painter from nothing just to sell. And sometimes it promised you a scene that was so good, the movie, it couldn't even deliver it because it was never shot in the first place. Like the most famous example of this is the movie Ghoulies. On that box, which is such a famous box, it has this monster crawling up out of a toilet, which who doesn't feel absolutely terrified by the concept of that? And everybody, at least my age, remembers that box because that image is burned into our generation. That scene, it's not in the movie because it never happened. The painter just made it up for the cover. And here's the punchline. The toilet monster got so famous as a painting that when they made the sequel, they went back and actually filmed a monster coming out of a toilet to match the box. The movie was rewritten to obey the cover. So now, finally, we can answer the real question. Why do you remember the box and not the movie? Because you were never really remembering the movie. You were just remembering the box and the movie your own head made out of it. You stood in that aisle and you looked at the paintings, and then your imagination started shooting its own film off that one little image, and your version, it was perfect. Your version, it had a budget, a huge budget, and your version was as scary as you could stand. That's the whole thing. That's the machine. Same machine as the drive-in, all right? If you're with me with the last podcast, the promise was bigger than anything the tape could hold. And your own imagination, it just rushed in to fill the gap. And it built something no $90 movie could ever compete with. Just listen to that voice, because that voice was the promise. It's not describing anything. It's selling you a feeling of wanting it. And you got to feel that every single week, every Friday night, because the wanting, that was the best part. I mean, maybe you got let down by the movie, but you never got let down by the box. And that box always had the best version inside of it, the one that you made. All right, I'm going to even complicate this more, because if I don't, I'm basically cheating you. And this show's not meant to cheat you, because it's not always true that the box was better than the movie. Sometimes the painter had seen the film, loved it even. And sometimes they only got a title. So remember I talked about this artist before, the one that sometimes got only a title? I mean, he also painted the cover for Evil Dead, and he had seen it in a screening and it knocked him flat. And the painting he made came straight from that. That's not a lie on a box. That is a piece of film criticism done in airbrush. Sometimes the promise was honest and the movie was every bit as good, and the box was just the door you walk through to get to it. Now here's the second thing, and it's the one that really gets to me. Sometimes you remember the box so well, not because it beat the movie, but because the box was all you were ever allowed to have. Think about that high shelf again, right? The one that you couldn't reach when you were super young. The tape your mother took out of your hands and put right back up there. You never even saw the movie. You couldn't. So the only version of it that exists anywhere for the rest of your life is the painting in the film your 7-year-old imagination made while you stared at it, terrified and excited. You do not remember the box better than the movie because the box won. You remember it because the box is all there ever was. And that forbidden charge was real enough that in Britain, it caused a genuine panic. In the early 80s, the covers that got so lurid, so violent, sitting there in shop windows where anyone could see them, that it set off this moral firestorm. I've talked about this a few times in other videos, the video nasties. And the strange, telling thing is what the authorities actually went after. It wasn't the films, mostly. It was the boxes, the paintings in the windows. The police, they went into the video shops and they seized tapes. And a lot of the officers, they really had no idea what was even on these tapes. They hadn't watched them. They were making the call off the cover art, off the paintings. And they got it wrong constantly. I mean, they hauled away perfectly harmless movies because the box, it looked obscene to the constable. A Dolly Parton musical actually got swept up in this. A serious war film got swept up because the painting was doing its job a bit too well. So let's think about that. The art was so powerful that the state came for the packaging and they left the product on the shelf. Nobody has ever paid a painting like a higher compliment. And then, of course, it died the way these things do. Slowly, then just all at once. The big chains came in and they cleaned it up. Bright lights, wide aisles, no curtains, no back room, no weird horror wall curated by a guy who just loved movies. It was just inventory, sorted and safe. And the price of tapes came way down. So now they were selling to you at the grocery store for $15. And the box stopped being a pitch to a shop owner. It started being a package on a rack next to the batteries. And the paintings, they just went away, like almost overnight. Those airbrush guys, the ones inventing monsters from a title, they got replaced by a computer and a photograph. I know, like, you know the look, right? The floating heads, the 2 stars, lit blue, chins up, staring off into nothing, hovering over an exploding city. Nobody ever stared at one of those for an hour. Nobody ever drew a map to find one ever again. Then the disc shrank the box. Then the screen ate the box. And now the promise is a thumbnail. A tiny little rectangle on a sheet of glass chosen for you by a machine that watched what you watched. Size so small that the painting, it couldn't survive in it even if anyone still tried to paint them. The wall of faces became a scroll. And you cannot get lost in a scroll. It won't let you. It already knows what it wants you to pick. So here's where we landed after all of this. The reason you remember the box and not the movie is almost embarrassingly simple. Once you see it, you just met the box more. You think about how many times in your life you actually saw that painting on the shelf every week for years. Maybe it was in your hands, you were turning it over, reading the back, put it on the counter, you slid it to the clerk. It's in the car on the way home, it's in your lap, on the living room floor, propped against the TV while the movie played. And if you were lucky and the store was throwing them out, maybe taped to your bedroom wall for a while after that. And the movie you saw it once, maybe twice, and it was fine, or it was bad, or you fell asleep before the end. The film played once, but the box, it kept auditioning. Every time you walked that aisle, it stood there and made its promise to you once again. Of course you remember it. You spent more time with the promise than you spent with the thing. And I don't think that's sad exactly. I think the box was telling the truth about something the movie never could. The best part, it was never the 90 minutes. The best part was the wanting, the aisle, the map in your head, and the painting you're a little bit afraid of doing its work on your imagination, $1 at a time. The movie, That was just the receipt. Hey, I'm Dan. Thanks for browsing with me. Next time you finally get the tape home, you push it in, and it does not look right. Snow, lines, a picture worn thin by 100 strangers who watched it before you. Next time, we talk about the ghost in the tape. Hey, before you go, quick shout out to the Vault Dwellers. These are the people who see every episode before anybody else because they decided this weird little show was worth paying for. This podcast, it's dedicated to them, all 106 of them. Thank you, Dwellers. See you in the next one. Keep it weird, folks.